a $2.2 billion criminal empire hidden in Italy, a $3.5 billion cocaine network, and a $6.9 billion syndicate stretching across continents. These are the wealthiest mafia bosses of 2024. Number 7. Matteo Messina, Denaro. Matteo Messina Denaro, often referred to as one of the most ruthless mafia bosses to ever live, has earned the chilling nickname Diabolic for his cold, calculated nature. Born into one of Sicily's most powerful mafia families, he took over the reins of the Cosa Nostra following his father's death. His approach to leadership was anything but conventional. He was known for his extreme brutality that cemented his terrifying reputation in the criminal world. By the tender age of 14, Denaro had already fired his first gun, marking the beginning of his violent career. By 18, he had committed his first murder, setting a precedent for the violent path he would follow. His boast about being able to fill a cemetery all by himself wasn't just idle talk. It was a reflection of his actions, which included numerous killings to maintain his power within the mafia. The 1990s saw Denaro deeply involved in several high-profile bombings across Italy, including a series of deadly attacks in 1993 in Florence, Rome, and Milan. These bombings, which resulted in 10 deaths and many injuries, were a stark message to the Italian government about the lengths to which the mafia would go to protect its interests. The bombings were not just acts of violence, but also psychological warfare, demonstrating the mafia's reach and their readiness to wage terror on civilians and infrastructure. One of the most horrific acts attributed to Denaro was the kidnapping of 12-year-old Giuseppe Di Matteo in 1993. This was in retaliation for his father turning informant against the mafia. After holding the boy hostage for over 2 years, they murdered him in a gruesome manner, dissolving his body in acid, an act that underscored Denaro's lack of mercy. This incident sent shockwaves through Italy, illustrating the lengths to which the mafia would go to silence opposition. While known for his violent crimes, Denaro also built his fortune through drug trafficking, establishing connections with Colombian drug cartels to expand his heroin and cocaine trade globally. Even while on the run, he managed to keep his criminal empire operational, living a life of luxury that included expensive cars, designer wear, and a notorious lifestyle as a womanizer, unlike many traditional mafia bosses. His opulence was not just a personal indulgence, but also a statement of power and invincibility to both his peers and adversaries. His ability to evade capture for nearly 3 decades turned him into a legendary figure in the criminal underworld. Rumors about his whereabouts were rampant until January 2023, when he was finally arrested while undergoing cancer treatment in Palermo, Sicily, marking a significant victory for Italian law enforcement and ending a decades-long manhunt. His capture was not just the end of an era, but also a testament to the relentless pursuit by authorities against organized crime. Even in his later years, Denaro maintained an aura of mystery and power. His arrest revealed not just the extent of his criminal operations, but also his deep connections within society, highlighting how deeply the mafia had infiltrated Italy's social and economic fabric. His story is a stark reminder of the mafia's enduring influence, even when its leaders are on the run. Number 6. Griselda Blanco. Griselda Blanco, known as the cocaine godmother, was one of the most feared and notorious drug lords during the tumultuous 1980s. She built an empire worth $2.2 billion by dominating the cocaine trade in Miami, which was at the epicenter of the drug wars. Her reputation for violence was as legendary as her success in the drug trade. Born in Colombia in 1943 into poverty, Blanco's early life was steeped in crime, setting the stage for her ascent in the drug world. By the time she moved her operations to the U.S., she had already made a name for herself as a ruthless figure. She played a pivotal role in the rise of the Medellin cartel, smuggling massive quantities of cocaine into Florida, which became a central hub for drug distribution. Blanco's control over the cocaine market in the 1980s was unparalleled, using not just her cunning, but also her willingness to eliminate anyone standing in her way. She was infamous for her cruelty, pioneering the use of drive-by shootings executed by motorcyclists, a method that became a signature of the Miami underworld during her reign. This innovation in violence not only kept her enemies at bay, but also terrorized the general populace, creating an atmosphere of fear that was integral to her control. Her nickname, the Black Widow, wasn't just for show. It was believed she was involved in the deaths of 3 of her husbands, showcasing her personal life was as violent as her business dealings. This blend of personal and professional ruthlessness made her a figure of both admiration and terror among those in the drug trade. Her marriages seemed to serve her criminal empire, with each husband either advancing her business or becoming a casualty of her ambition. Despite her violent impact, Blanco lived a life of opulence, with lavish homes, a fleet of luxury cars, and even famously gifting her son a gold-plated, diamond-encrusted gun. Her wealth was not just amassed but also flaunted, making her a symbol of power in the drug world. Her lifestyle was a stark contrast to the brutality she was known for, showcasing how crime could lead to a life of luxury and excess. Blanco's rule over Miami's cocaine scene ended with her arrest in 1985, leading to a 20-year prison sentence. Even from behind bars, she managed to control parts of her empire. After her release in 2004, her influence waned until she met her end in 2012, assassinated in a drive-by shooting, an ironic twist given her past methods. Her legacy remains one of the darkest in organized crime, marked by wealth, violence, and the shaping of the Miami drug wars. Years after her death, Blanco's story continues to captivate, illustrating how her methods and influence reshaped the drug trade in the U.S. Her life is a cautionary tale of how power, when wielded without mercy, can lead to both immense success and inevitable downfall. Number 5. Carlos Lehder. Carlos Lehder, one of the founding members of the infamous Medellin cartel, amassed a fortune of $2.9 billion through one of history's most sophisticated drug trafficking operations. His story is a blend of innovation, ambition, and ruthless enforcement, making him one of the most influential drug lords of his time. Born in Armenia, Colombia, Lehder seemed an unlikely candidate for a life of crime, but his meeting with George Young in prison changed his trajectory. Together, they envisioned a direct route for cocaine smuggling into the U.S., using Lehder's idea of a private island in the Bahamas as a transit point. This was not just a logistical move, but a strategic one, allowing control over the supply chain from production to distribution. Norman's Cay became Lehder's base of operations, a small island transformed into a smuggling haven, complete with a runway for drug-laden planes. His method cut out intermediaries, allowing him to control the entire supply chain from Colombia to the U.S., significantly increasing his profits and turning the Medellin cartel into a powerhouse. The island was not just a transit point, but also a fortress, with Lehder ruling like a king, with his own laws and military might. Lehder's control over Norman's Cay was absolute. He ruled like a dictator, employing a private army to guard his operations and eliminate threats. His ruthlessness was matched by his eccentricity, notably his fascination with Nazi ideology, which he used to fund political movements aligned with his criminal activities. His vision was not just to be a drug lord, but to create a new societal order that would protect his criminal empire, blending political ambition with his drug trade. Despite his success, Lehder's aggressive tactics made him a high-profile target. His reign ended in 1987 with his capture by Colombian authorities, pressured by the U.S. His subsequent extradition to the U.S. resulted in a life sentence plus 135 years, though this was later reduced for cooperation with the government. His arrest was a significant blow to the Medellin cartel, symbolizing the beginning of its decline. Carlos Lehder's story is one of dramatic rise and fall, showcasing how innovation in criminal enterprise could lead to vast wealth, but also to inevitable downfall. His legacy in drug smuggling remains a topic of both fascination and condemnation. His methods and vision for drug trafficking changed the landscape of the drug trade, leaving a lasting impact on how such operations were conducted globally. Even after his imprisonment, Lehder's influence lingered, with many of his smuggling techniques becoming standard practice in the drug trade. His story is a testament to how a single individual's vision can alter the course of international drug trafficking, for better or worse. Number 4. Gilberto Rodriguez Orejuela. Gilberto Rodriguez Orejuela, co-founder of the Cali cartel, was known for orchestrating one of the most business-savvy drug empires in history. Unlike the violent reputation of the Medellin cartel led by Pablo Escobar, Gilberto and his brother Miguel operated with a more calculated approach, earning them the nickname the Gentleman. Their strategy was rooted in corruption, infiltrating politics and law enforcement, and making deals behind closed doors. This approach allowed them to expand their operations globally, especially into Europe, where Gilberto established connections with Italian mafia groups to distribute cocaine. Their method was not about brute force, but about strategic alliances and influence, making them one of the most sophisticated criminal organizations of their time. By the 1990s, the Cali cartel under Gilberto's leadership controlled about 80% of the global cocaine market, using innovative methods like hiding drugs in everyday products to bypass customs. Their business model included extensive money laundering through legitimate businesses, from pharmacies to real estate, effectively hiding their illicit gains. This not only fueled their wealth, but also made them appear as legitimate businessmen, a facade that helped them operate with less scrutiny. Despite their polished exterior, the Cali cartel could be just as brutal when necessary, employing hitmen for kidnappings, torture, and murder to maintain their power. However, their preference was for backroom deals over open warfare, which helped them stay under the radar for years. When violence was inevitable, they executed it with precision, ensuring that it was used only when it served their strategic interests. Gilberto's empire began to unravel in 1995 with his arrest during a dramatic raid, where he was found hiding in a secret compartment in his home. Although sentenced to 15 years in Colombian prison, he continued to run parts of the cartel from behind bars until his extradition to the US in 2004. Even from prison, his influence was felt, with family members convicted in 2018 for laundering money from his era. His influence persisted even from prison, with family members convicted in 2018 for laundering money from his era. Despite health issues like cancer and heart attacks, his requests for compassionate release were denied. Gilberto died in 2022, but his impact on the global drug trade and the way crime could be organized like a legitimate business will long be remembered. His story is a testament to how brains can be as powerful as brawn in the criminal world, but also how even the smartest criminals face their downfall. The legacy of Gilberto Rodriguez Orejuela is one of strategic criminality, showing how a calculated approach to crime can build vast empires, but also how such empires can be brought down by persistent law enforcement efforts and the complexities of maintaining secrecy in an interconnected world. Number 3, Khun Sa. Khun Sa, known as the Opium King, was one of the most powerful and wealthiest drug lords in history, with an empire built on the opium trade from Southeast Asia's Golden Triangle. At his peak, his wealth was estimated at $5.5 billion, reflecting the scale of his operations. His rise to power started in the 1960s, where he took control of opium production at the intersection of Thailand, Myanmar, and Laos. Khun Sa's control over this region made him a central figure in the heroin trade, supplying markets in the US and Europe, contributing significantly to drug epidemics in those areas. His operation was not just about production. It was a full-scale enterprise that included processing and distribution. He built a formidable army to protect his drug trade, ensuring that his operations were nearly untouchable by law enforcement. His method was straightforward: control the cultivation of opium poppies, process it into heroin, and then distribute it using his own smuggling routes. His army was not just for protection, but also for enforcing his will across the region, turning the Golden Triangle into his personal fiefdom. Khun Sa's power wasn't limited to drug trafficking. He manipulated political and military groups in the region to maintain his dominion. His deals with rebel factions and even governments were secured through bribes, threats, and violence, creating a complex web of alliances and enmities. His manipulation of local politics made him more than just a drug lord. He was a warlord with significant regional influence. In an audacious move in the 1980s, he offered to sell his entire opium crop to the US government in exchange for political recognition, showcasing both his ambition and his grasp on the situation. However, with increased international pressure in the 1990s, his empire began to weaken. This offer was a clear indication of his desire for legitimacy and power beyond the criminal world, blending his illicit business with political aspirations. His surrender in 1996 to the Myanmar government was not the end one might expect. Instead, he lived out his years in luxury in Yangon, passing away in 2007. Khun Sa's story is a tale of immense wealth derived from the drug trade, but also one of the human tragedy that such enterprises perpetuate. His life and legacy highlight the complex interplay between crime, politics, and power in regions where law enforcement is challenged by geography and corruption. Khun Sa's influence on the drug trade was so profound that even after his death, the methods he pioneered continued to be used, shaping drug trafficking strategies in Southeast Asia. His story is a stark reminder of how the drug trade can become a tool for both personal enrichment and regional destabilization. Number 2, Viktor Bout. Viktor Bout, infamously known as the Merchant of Death, amassed a fortune of $6.2 billion by supplying arms to some of the world's most volatile regions. His story is a mix of daring, danger, and destruction, as he became one of the most notorious arms dealers in history. Starting his career in the Soviet military, Bout gained a deep understanding of arms logistics. After the Soviet Union's collapse, he saw an opportunity in the surplus of military hardware, creating a global network to sell these weapons to conflict zones, using old Soviet planes for transport. His operation was not just about selling arms, it was about keeping conflicts simmering, ensuring a steady demand for his products. Bout's business model was simple but deadly. He would sell to anyone with the funds regardless of their cause. This included dictators, rebel groups, and warlords, fueling conflicts in Africa, the Middle East, and South America. His weapons were often implicated in some of the worst human rights abuses, including arming child soldiers. His lack of moral compunction made him an enabler of violence, with his arms playing pivotal roles in many civil wars and genocides. His operations were sophisticated, using shell companies and falsified documents to mask his shipments. Bout's ability to supply arms where others couldn't made him a key player in many conflicts, often exacerbating the violence for profit. His logistical prowess allowed him to navigate through international sanctions and embargoes, making him a ghost in the world of arms trafficking. Convicted of conspiracy to kill U.S. citizens and supporting terrorism, he was sentenced to 25 years in prison. His legacy is one of how one man's greed could fuel global conflicts, making him one of the most feared criminals of modern times. His capture was celebrated as a victory against the shadow networks that fuel war, yet his impact on several conflicts remains undeniable. The story of Viktor Bout is not just about arms trafficking, but serves as a broader narrative on how the global arms trade can destabilize regions, perpetuate violence, and how the pursuit of profit can ignore the human cost. His case has led to increased scrutiny and regulation of arms sales worldwide. Number 1, Dawood Ibrahim. Dawood Ibrahim, at the helm of a criminal empire worth $6.9 billion, is one of the most feared mafia bosses globally. His organization, D Company, started from Mumbai's local gang scene, expanding into a vast network involved in drug trafficking, extortion, terrorism, and money laundering. Born in 1955 in Mumbai's Dongri neighborhood, Dawood's criminal career began early, but it was the murder of his brother that propelled him into leadership, seeking revenge and establishing his dominance in the underworld. His control over Mumbai didn't just come from violence, but from a strategic expansion of his criminal activities into various sectors, creating a syndicate that was both feared and respected. D Company grew from a local gang into a global criminal enterprise under Dawood's leadership. He expanded his operations into drug smuggling, becoming a major player in the international heroin trade. His connections to cartels and other criminal organizations around the world solidified his empire, making him one of the richest criminals through the drug trade. His ability to navigate through different criminal landscapes showcased his cunning and adaptability. But Dawood's criminal reach extended beyond drugs. His organization was involved in arms trafficking, counterfeiting, and human smuggling, with Dawood taking a cut from all these illegal activities, amassing millions. His strategic mind led him to blend crime with legitimate business, investing in real estate and other ventures, which not only laundered his dirty money, but also legitimized his presence in various countries. One of the most notorious acts linked to Dawood is the 1993 Bombay bombings, which killed 257 people and injured over 1,400. These bombings were in retaliation for religious riots in the city, marking him as not just a criminal mastermind, but also a terrorist. This incident placed him on the radar of global law enforcement, and he was labeled a global terrorist by India and the United States, with ties to extremist groups like Lashkar-e-Taiba and Al-Qaeda, further complicating his criminal profile. Despite being one of the world's most wanted, Dawood has managed to evade capture for over 30 years. He's believed to be living in Pakistan, protected by local authorities, enjoying a lavish lifestyle with properties across several countries, including a mansion in Karachi that boasts all the amenities of luxury living. His wealth and influence have allowed him to maintain his criminal empire from the shadows, making him a symbol of how crime can intertwine with politics and international relations. Dawood Ibrahim's story is one of extreme power, wealth, and violence. From his control of drug smuggling networks to his involvement in terrorism, his empire serves as a dark reminder of the destructive power of organized crime. Even today, his influence is felt around the world, and his $6.9 billion fortune keeps him at the apex of the criminal hierarchy, a testament to how deep the roots of crime can go when intertwined with political and economic systems. The saga of Dawood Ibrahim is not only about crime, but also about the geopolitical implications of such vast criminal networks, showing how they can influence international relations, security, and the global economy. His ongoing evasion of justice underscores the challenges in combating transnational organized crime.